Hi everyone. I hope you're having a great day. Today, we'll explore an emotional story about James, his father's return, and the shocking truth about Diep's parents. It's a journey of family, forgiveness, and love. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next videos. James longs for his father to return home so their family can finally be whole again. At the same time, he reveals a shocking truth to Diep. Her parents are still alive. Years ago, they left her behind in the village because of crushing poverty and went to the city to survive. Now, successful, they want to bring her back to live with them. Diep, devastated and furious, feels betrayed by decades of silence and insists her parents are dead to her. Meanwhile, James convinces his father to return permanently and to bless his love for Diep. When Diep falls ill during a storm, James stays by her side all night, showing his unwavering care. From that night forward, Diep's heart slowly opens, and together, they begin to build a new chapter of healing, family, and love. The rich aroma of food drifts from the small kitchen, where James's mother is busy at the stove, her hands moving with practiced grace as she prepares breakfast. Steaming dishes quickly fill the wooden table, their warmth spreading a sense of home and belonging. James steps inside, eyes softening at the familiar sight. "Mom, you've made so many delicious dishes again," James says gently, his voice carrying a mixture of gratitude and unspoken weight. Mother turns, her face lined with years of quiet sacrifice, and offers a small smile. "It's just what I always do. You've been working hard, so you need strength," she replies. But beneath her calm words, a flicker of concern lingers. The clinking of chopsticks and bowls fills the air for a while, until James finally breaks the silence, voice hesitant yet firm. "Mom, I want Dad to come home. It's been too long. I want us to be together again." The words hang heavy in the air. His mother pauses, her eyes glistening with both pride and worry. Slowly, she nods. "I know, James. I've spoken to your father. He agreed to listen. When he returns, you must speak from your heart." James exhales, relief mixing with apprehension. "I'm not comfortable talking to him. It's always been like there's a wall between us." His fingers tighten around the spoon, as though clinging to the hope that maybe this time things could change. Mother leans closer, her voice low, but steady. "Your father may seem distant, but he's not cold. He carries his burden silently. Choose your words with care. Don't let pride rob you of family." The kitchen grows still, the weight of years pressing down on them both. James stares at the pale morning light streaming through the curtain, painting soft golden lines across the table. This small kitchen, filled with simple dishes and quiet love, has become more than a place for meals. It is the ground where unspoken promises are planted, where the longing for family finds its deepest roots. James feels a fire kindle in his chest. He whispers more to himself than anyone else. "I will do it. I'll talk to Dad. I'll bring him home." Mother's eyes soften, silently blessing her son's resolve. Late afternoon casts its warm glow across Diep's modest home. James stands outside, heart pounding, knowing that what he's about to say could shatter or save the fragile trust between them. He knocks lightly, and Diep appears at the door, her expression tired but curious. "James, what brings you here at this hour?" she asks, her voice calm yet cautious. James draws a deep breath, steadying himself. "Diep, there's something you need to know. It's about your parents." Diep blinks, startled. Her face pales as her hands grip the wooden doorframe. "My parents? What about them?" "They died. Everyone told me they died." "No," James says gently, but with undeniable firmness. "They're still alive." Time seems to stop. The world outside fades, leaving only the echo of those words. Diep's lips tremble. "That's not possible. Uncle Kian told me they were gone. He raised me. He wouldn't lie." Her voice is breaking, each word clinging desperately to the only truth she has ever known. James lowers his gaze for a moment before meeting hers again, eyes full of sorrow. "Uncle Keen hid it from you. He didn't want you to leave, didn't want you to question the life he built around you. But the truth is, your parents didn't die. When you were little, they were too poor to keep going. They left everything behind and went to the city to survive. They worked day and night, and now they've succeeded. They're stable, and they want you back. They want you to live with them." Diep stumbles back a step, the words slicing through her heart like a blade. Tears well in her eyes. "So they abandoned me? Left me to grow up believing I was unwanted? If they cared, why didn't they come back sooner? 20 years, James. 20 years of silence. Do you know what it's like to wait and hear nothing? To believe you're alone in this world?" Her voice rises, shaking with rage and grief. James steps forward, desperate to bridge the chasm. "They never stopped thinking of you. They wanted to return sooner, but life wasn't kind. They had nothing. No money. No place to bring you to. They thought leaving you here was the only way you could survive. It was wrong, Diep, but it wasn't because they didn't love you." Diep shakes her head violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. "No. To me, they're already dead. The people I longed for never came. The parents I imagined in my heart are gone. Don't ask me to accept strangers who only appear after decades." The fading sun paints her face with streaks of fire, reflecting both her anguish and defiance. She turns away, her shoulders trembling, shutting James out with a wall of pain built over years of abandonment. James's chest tightens. He reaches out, but his hand falls back to his side. His voice falters, heavy with guilt. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Diep. I thought knowing the truth would heal, not wound. But I can't carry this secret anymore. Whatever you decide, just know they're waiting. And they still love you." Silence engulfs the space between them. The evening breeze brushes against the small house, whispering through the cracks as if carrying words left unspoken. James lingers for a moment, then slowly steps back, his heart weighed down by both regret and hope. Inside, Diep sinks onto a chair, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Memories she thought were sealed forever now rush back, colliding with the bitter truth. Her mind screams questions, but no answers come. The home she once considered a place of acceptance now feels like a prison of lies. James walks away, every step echoing with sorrow. The world around him glows with the last light of day, yet all he feels is the heavy shadow of Diep's grief. He whispers into the wind, as though sending the words to her heart. One day, you'll see them, and maybe you'll forgive. The quiet road stretches ahead, the horizon tinted with gold and crimson. James carries the burden of truth, a truth that could either reunite Diep with the family she was robbed of, or forever deepen the wound of abandonment. The choice now lies in her hands, and James can only hope she finds the strength to face it. Night settles over the village, the air heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth. James lies awake, replaying every word from earlier, every tear that streamed down Diep's face. He had hoped the truth would bring healing, but instead it unearthed wounds too deep, too raw. Sleep refuses to come. Finally, he sits up, determination flickering in his eyes. Tomorrow, he will not only face Diep again, but also prepare for the return of his father. The next morning dawns gray, with clouds hanging low. James joins his mother at the breakfast table once more. The dishes are simpler today, but the atmosphere feels weightier. "Did you talk to Diep?" his mother asks, her tone gentle but probing. James nods, eyes clouded. "I told her everything. She didn't believe me, or maybe she didn't want to. She said to her parents are already gone." Mother's chopsticks pause midair. Her face shows sorrow, but also a quiet understanding. It's not easy to forgive, James. Imagine carrying 20 years of pain, only to learn it was built on lies. She will need time. James lowers his head, voice hoarse. "I just wish I could take away her pain. And I need Dad here. Not only for me, but for her. I want him to see how important she is to me, how much I want us to be a family." Mother reaches across the table, placing her hand over his. "Then speak to him when he returns. Show him your heart. A father can resist many things, but not the sincerity of his child." James nods, resolve settling into his chest like steel. 2 weeks later, the long-awaited day arrives. The sky is clear, the sun blazing with promise. James stands nervously at the village bus station, his palms clammy. Finally, a bus pulls up, and among the passengers, he sees him. His father, tall and weathered, his presence commanding without a word. "Dad," James breathes, voice tight with emotion. His father steps off, eyes scanning his son. For a long moment, silence hangs between them, filled with years of unspoken distance. Then, with a faint nod, father says simply, "James." They return home together, and as the family sits down, the air grows thick with anticipation. James's mother looks between them, her eyes silently urging James to speak. James swallows hard, then begins, "Dad, I want you to come back for good. Not just for visits. I want our family whole again. I don't want to live with miles between us anymore." Father's gaze is steady, his expression unreadable. "James, you know why I work abroad. Everything I've done was for this family. Sacrifice doesn't always come with comfort." "I know," James says, voice trembling. "But I don't need money. I don't need things. I need you. Mom needs you. And..." His voice catches as he continues, "And Diep needs us too." Father's brow furrows. "Diep?" James nods, eyes burning with conviction. "I love her, and I want your blessing for us to be together. She's been through so much pain already. I want to give her a family, to protect her, but I can't do it without knowing I have your support. The room falls silent. Even the ticking clock seems to pause. James's father leans back, his face shadowed by deep thought. For years, he had carried the burden of providing, never realizing the cost of absence. His eyes soften, just slightly. "You truly love her?" he asks at last. "With all my heart," James answers without hesitation. "Enough to fight for her, even when she pushes me away." A long silence stretches, until finally, Father exhales deeply. "Then you have my blessing. I will come home. I don't want to be a stranger to my own family anymore." James's chest tightens with relief, tears blurring his vision. He nods, overwhelmed. "Thank you, Dad." The news spreads quickly. Diep hears it from James himself later that day, his voice filled with joy as he tells her his father has agreed to return and to accept their love. Diep listens quietly, her emotions tangled. "That's wonderful for you, James. But my own family, that's another story." James takes her hand gently. "Your parents are alive. They're waiting. I know it's hard to accept after all these years, but they didn't abandon you out of hate. They left because they couldn't see another way to survive. And now they want to make it right. Will you at least meet them? Just once?" Diep pulls her hand back, her eyes filled with turmoil. "You don't understand. To see them now, after everything, I don't know if I can." James doesn't push further. Instead, he says softly, "Then let me stand by you. Whether you accept them or not, I'll be here. You won't face this alone." His words hang between them, tender yet firm, planting a seed of comfort in Diep's conflicted heart. Days later, Diep receives a letter. The handwriting is unfamiliar, yet the words pierce straight through her defenses. "My beloved daughter, we have waited years for the chance to see you again. We left not because we didn't love you, but because we were drowning in poverty. We thought leaving would give you a better chance, though it broke our hearts. We never stopped thinking of you. Not a day passed without your face in our minds. Now, by God's grace, we are stable, and we long to bring you into our arms again. Please forgive us. Please let us see you. Your mother and father." The paper blurs as Diep's tears fall onto it. She clutches the letter to her chest, her body trembling. Memories flood back. Lonely nights, silent prayers, the ache of abandonment. Yet within those lines, she feels something genuine, a love buried but not dead. Still, fear holds her back. She whispers into the night, "Do I even know how to forgive?" The following week, rain pours down without mercy, flooding the narrow roads. James rushes to Diep's house, worried. He finds her pale, lying weak under a thin blanket, fever burning her body. "Diep," he calls, rushing to her side. "Why didn't you tell me you were sick?" She forces a faint smile. "It's just a cold. Don't worry." But James won't leave. He stays the entire night, tending to her with warm towels, cooking porridge, keeping vigil by her side as the storm rages outside. He whispers softly when she stirs in fevered dreams, words of reassurance she barely hears. "You're not alone. Not anymore. I'm here." By dawn, her fever breaks. Diep opens her eyes to find James slumped beside her bed, asleep from exhaustion, his hand still holding hers. For the first time in years, she feels the warmth of true care, the comfort of being wanted. Her heart softens. Watching him, she realizes the walls she built to protect herself are beginning to crumble. She murmurs quietly, almost afraid to admit it even to herself. "James, I think I'm starting to feel the same." From that stormy night onward, something shifts. Their bond deepens, not because of grand promises, but because of small, steadfast acts of love. James's father keeps his word, returning to rebuild the family. And though Diep still wrestles with the scars of the past, James stands firmly by her side, giving her strength to face whatever comes. The truth about her parents remains a painful wound, but now, with James's unwavering presence and the possibility of reunion, Diep begins to see a path forward, not just of sorrow, but of healing. And so, in a world once marked by abandonment and distance, the seeds of family and love begin to grow again.